away. See the light ahead, right ahead. There's a moonlit night ahead. Everyone, come on, have fun. All's well. Why do they make me sing that song? The poet who wrote it was certainly wrong. It's bright ahead, go right ahead. I'd rather go home and go right to bed. My feet are wet, my bunions ache, and yet I've got to keep wide awake all night. I wake folks up to tell them things are all right and all's well. What's a rainy day? Never mind that cloud. Behind that cloud you'll find the golden ray. All's well. Laugh your fears away. See the light ahead, right ahead. There's a moonlit night ahead. Everyone, come on, have fun. Oh! Well, what's a rainy day?
Visitors.
Do you know they're signing a wedding contract?
There's a giant on the beach. There's a giant out there. Oh, listen to...
Your Majesty.
Thank you, Your Majesty. Marriage contract. King Little of Lilliput on this 5th day of November can I hand of his daughter, Princess Glory. To Prince David, son of Bombo, King of Blefuscu. Right in order. Right. King Bombo. We did it, you little rascal, you. We did it.
Yes, we certainly did, didn't we?
Just a couple of old Dan Cupids, I think.
Your Majesty, the wedding things are here.
There's a giant on the beach. There's a giant.
Exquisite taste. Exquisite.
Roses, freesies, rhododendrons, ranunculus, snapdragons und daisies. Pretty posies, aren't they?
Beautiful blooms. Beautiful. Oh. May I?
Oh, please do.
Magnificent. Oh, a masterpiece. Vanilla. Wow!
My only little daughter. I dread losing her.
Oh, buck up there, old boy. You're not losing a daughter. You're gaining a son. My son, David. Lovely melody.
Yes, we like it. That is Faithful, the song of Lilliput. It will be played at the wedding tomorrow.
Of course, of course. Oh, what's that? Faithful? Oh, no, no. Forever, the song of Blefuscu must be played at the wedding.
But, Bombo, Faithful is always played at our weddings. It's tradition, sir. And it's very pretty.
Yes, yes, I know. Pleasant little ditty, but hardly appropriate for this great occasion. But forever, there's a song for you. Ha-ha!
Faithful will be played.
Ah, twaddle. Absolute twaddle. It must be forever.
Faithful.
Forever.
Faithful.
Forever. It will be forever, or there will be no wedding.
No wedding, but the cake and the pretty flowers and... Oh, Bombo, you love Faithful. Ah!
Oh, Joanna, take your... Why, this is an outrage. I've never... It's war!
War. Oh, it's me. Oh, it's me.
I found the mountain, Your Majesty. I found it. It was a man mountain.
War isn't nice.
It was fist big. No, it was fist big.
People are hurt in wars.
He's as big as. Wait, Your Majesty.
Bombo can't frighten me. No, sir. Speak up. Don't stand there like a nincompoop.
I'm trying to tell you that there's a giant.
When I get my dandruff up, look out. But Glory. Poor little Glory.
Don't look now, gentlemen, but it's war. War? Whoopee!
War. Rolls off my back like a duck.
But I'm trying to tell you. I'm telling you, there's a.
What's on your mind?
I say.
Speak up, man.
There's a giant on the beach. There's a giant on the beach.
For heaven's sake, Gabby, button your mouth. Can't you see I have a war on my hands? Be off with you. Shoo, 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 shoo.
A war? Do you suppose he can be a spy?
Or he followed me with patient. Who's a spy? Who's a spy?
The giant on the beach.
Giant! Why don't you tell me these things? Do something. Don't stand there. Go, stick the dogs on. Fetch him to me at once.
Wake up!
Giant!
Quiet. We're almost there.
Where is it?
I don't know. But it was right here.
Here. Oh, yeah? Well, where is it now?
Well, I can't understand it. It was right here. Honest.
Giant. Dragging us out in the dead of the night. Yeah, chasing wild geese.
Gabby must have been seeing things. Maybe it just got up and flew away.
Yeah, and breathing fire.
Look out, Gabby! Your giant's gonna bite you! hey, fellas, maybe it was me he saw. Look, I'm a giant. I'm a giant. Listen.
Told you that there was a giant on the beach, and well, there he is.
He said that's the giant on the beach!
There isn't a moment to waste. Every last man must do all that he can. Work with the greatest of haste. So bind up its hands, its arms, its chest, its neck, its feet. And I'll do the rest. Let's go!
Quiet. Quiet.
Below!
Okay, let's go.
Giddy up! Hurry! Oh! Giddy up! Giddy up! Come on, you're right there.
Find the ropes there. Not so fast. Not so fast. Hurry up there. Slow down. Get the wheels past. I don't know what they would do around here without me. Heave, heave.
Faithful was always played at our weddings. Faithful. Faithful.
Your Majesty, I've got the giant.
The giant? Oh, yes, the giant. Well, bring him in. Bring him in.
Okay. Your Majesty, I don't think he'd fit in here.
Oh, you don't, huh? So it's not good enough for him, Well, where is he?
Out there, Your Majesty.
Now then. Not good enough for him. Well, where is he?
From here on.
Call out the guards, the army, the navy, women and children first. I'll see you later.
Search him, men. He may be armed. Let me in. Let me in. Help. I don't like it. Let me go. Help. Help. Let me go. I don't want to die. Help.
Well,
Put me down.
what have we got here?
Help. Don't eat me. Don't eat me. Help. I won't taste good. I'll give you indigestion.
A
Let me
man.
go.
A
Help.
tiny man.
No, you can't do this to me. I got a wife and kids, millions of kids.
Hold on there, mate. Nobody's going to hurt you.
Help! Put me down. Help! Help!
Drop that. Drop that.
Well, another one. Who are you?
Who, me? What? I'm king around here. Guards! Guards! To the turrets! Archers! Surround the giant! Surround the giant! Guards!
Well,
You'll pay for this. Ready!
Aim fire!
Aim!
Fire!
How do you like that? Want some more? All right, let it go!
It's Bob! Oh! Close the gates! Man the battlements! Defend the city! We're attacked! We're attacked!
Stop! Stop, you swine! Get back to your post! Get back there and fight! We of Blefuscu are not afraid of anything.
well, there's everyone gone. This is no way to treat a harmless visitor.
Look, Gabby, we've won! Gabby? See, Gabby, they've gone. Yes, sir, I was scared still.
Hello there. Come now, don't let my size frighten you. You, Your Majesty. Surely you're not afraid of me. Well, good. Then let me present myself. My name is Gulliver, Your Majesty. Lemuel Gulliver, a shipwrecked sailor. At your service.
Well, welcome to Lilliput, Mr. Gulliver. Mr. Gulliver, can you fight?
Well, Your Majesty, I can lick anybody my size.
Ah, splendid, splendid. I don't think Bombo will give us any further trouble while you're around here. No, sir. He's on our side, Gabby. He's on our side. There's nothing to fear. The Mad Mountain's on our side.
Comes a rainy day, and when that mountain
sleigh, toodaloo-lay, for you and me, for us, all across ever.
The world's all right, it's a happy day.
Come on, where are those buttons?
Happy day. You can't go wrong if you sing that song. It's a happy day.
Hey, look out! Grab it! Hold on! Nab it!
You understand that not until that giant is removed can our forces taste the sweet fruits of victory. Now then, it is up to you to carry this message to my spies in Lilliput. Be off, and may luck be with you. Get going!
Your Majesty, I'm sorry the little princess isn't with us.
Yes, too bad. Too much excitement for one day. moonlight.
That's how I feel when I'm with you. There are night owls in the daylight.
Silly idea, night owls in the daylight.
My heart is saying,
Who is the one for us? You! It's what you've done for us.
there are night
as big as your shoe.
My.
I lost her, though, in a furious gale. But I came home on the back of a whale.
But tell me how you caught the whale.
Simply grabbed a hold of his tail.
My.
I climbed a mountain peak so high, I bumped my head against the sky. And there I was. Where was I?
On the island of Alibi.
I.
My.
I. But now my life is very dull. They ought to make me an admiral. Now that's the job that I'd enjoy. I must be going. Ahoy, ahoy.
My.
You put that ball in there, and then it goes down and around. Pull that thing.
And it comes out here.
Giant!
Wow!
The light, douse the light. He's gone.
Hello? Anybody in there?
Nobody here but just us. Chickens!
My.
But you remember I'm true, my sweet.
Forever, da 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 la 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 la.
Forever? That's the song of Blitzerskew. Hi. Where did he go? Concealing a spy. And in a time of war, too. That makes it worse. Carry on the search, men. Mind you, your father will hear of this.
King Bombo, say the word, and the giant is a dead duck.
Is a dead duck.
P.S. What do we do with the body?
2 hearts and a wedding broken by a melody? Incredible. Wait a minute. I have an idea that might turn this malice to a melody. Sing faithful and forever together as one song.
The giant will be a dead duck.
Ha!
Now we are getting at somewhere.
Dear spies, destroy, crush, obliterate, annihilate. Hear him. I will attack at dawn. Affectionately yours, Bombo.
What you got there? Attack at dawn. Attack. Bombo's attack. Guards! 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 Bombo's attacking! Bombo's attacking! Bombo's attacking at dawn! Bombo's attacking! It's war! Bombo's attacking! To arms! It's war! The enemy attacks! To the beach! To the beach! Bomb attacking! What? Bombo attacking! War! It's war! To the beach! To the beach! The enemy attacks!
To defend Lilliput. Yes, forward march.
All together now, all together now.
Gulliver! Gulliver! Where are you? Bombo's attacking! Where are you, Gulliver? We'll be wiped out! Gulliver, where are you? Gulliver! Gulliver! Bombo's attacking! Gulliver! Gulliver! Bombo's attacking! It's war! Gulliver! It's war! Gulliver! Where are you? Gulliver! Gulliver! It's the war, Gulliver! Bombo's attacking! Bombo's attacking! It's war! Let me down! Huh! Well, where you been, you lazy, long-legged, overgrown lummox? Now, get down there to that beach and wipe out that Bombo and that bunch of Lepidurians. And tear 'em to pieces. And don't leave a man alive to tell the tale. Forward march!
Aye,
Get
aye,
going.
sir. My.
Hey! Wait for me! Gulliver! Wait for me! Wait for me, Gulliver!
What is it?
What did you do with it?
Where'd you lose it?
Who's got it now?
Gulliver, wait for me. Let me go, let me go.
Let's go!
Hold on there. We can settle this peacefully. Listen. Hold your fire. Hear what I have to say. Bombo, order your men to lay down their arms. Must I make you listen?
David, look. Gulliver's Thunder Machine.
Wait here, Glory.
David.
The powder. The powder.
Come on, pull! Pull! David.
Poor, foolish little people. Look what you've done. Now go ahead, break your nutshell heads over your songs. But did you have to break Glory's heart, King Little? Because you're thoughtless and selfish? And you, Bombo, oh mighty warrior, what have you won? You were too stubborn to think, too busy quarreling to lend ear to the harmony that might have been yours. But now, in your sorrow and despair, perhaps you'll listen to your songs as they might be sung. Remember that. I'll keep smiling.
Remember that.
We may be apart, now and then, but I'll hold you in my heart till you're in my arms again. Faithful forever, I promise to.
Yes.
So always,
In behalf of the peoples of Blefuscu and Lilliput, with eternal gratitude and love in our hearts, we christen thee Gulliver.